McCormick and Company is recalling seasonings due to possible salmonella contamination.
Is recalling more than 4,000 pounds of its chicken soup that's been mislabeled, and it's been shipped to retailers here in Florida. The USDA says the soup is being recalled because of undeclared milk and other allergens.
I know you're already planning your Thanksgiving menu, trusting the same brands your family has used for decades. But what if I told you that some of the most trusted names in holiday cooking have been hiding contamination scandals, environmental crimes, and deliberate deception that specifically targets people over 50? We're talking about glass shards in condiments, deadly bacteria in spices, and $40 million fraud settlements. Today, I'm exposing 9 Thanksgiving sides brands that have been betraying your trust and endangering your family, plus the 5 safe alternatives that will actually protect your holiday table. Let's start with number 1, and this might surprise you because it's sitting in most of your refrigerators right now. Ocean Spray, the cranberry sauce king that's been on Thanksgiving tables for decades, has some serious skeletons in their corporate closet that go far deeper than most people realize. Back in 2020, they got slapped with a $5.4 million settlement for straight-up lying to customers about their ingredients. They were plastering no artificial flavors all over their cranberry products while secretly pumping them full of synthetic malic acid and fumaric acid. But this wasn't just one lawsuit. It was part of a pattern of deceptive marketing that includes multiple class action cases. There's the Froyo v. Ocean Spray case from 2018, where they got caught making false, no artificial flavors claims on their cranberry juice blends. Then there's ongoing litigation over their 100% juice, labeling when their products contain added sugars and synthetic ingredients. They've also faced lawsuits for marketing their craisins as healthy when they're loaded with added sugars, specifically targeting health-conscious consumers who actually read labels. But here's what really gets my blood boiling: the antitrust violations that show Ocean Spray's true corporate character. Federal courts found them guilty of manipulating the entire cranberry market through what can only be described as organized crime tactics. They were running fake auctions for cranberry purchases, deliberately keeping prices below market value to screw over the very farmers who grow their cranberries. The settlement range was $20 to $40 million because the evidence showed systematic market manipulation over years. Ocean Spray was using their market dominance. They control about 70% of the cranberry market to artificially depress prices and force farmers into unfair contracts. When farmers tried to sell to competitors, Ocean Spray would engage in discriminatory practices to punish them. And here's something that didn't make the headlines. Ocean Spray had a recall in April 2020 for their Pink Light cranberry juice drink because of undeclared sulfites. Consumers were complaining about off odors, and it turned out they were shipping contaminated products that could trigger severe allergic reactions in sulfite-sensitive people. For folks who remember when a handshake meant something and companies had integrity, Ocean Spray represents everything that's wrong with modern corporate America. They didn't just deceive customers about ingredients. They built their empire on systematically cheating farmers and manipulating entire markets while hiding behind wholesome Thanksgiving imagery. And if you think Ocean Spray is bad, wait until you hear what Campbell's has been dumping into the water supply that your grandchildren drink. Moving to number 2, and this one's going to make you think twice about that Campbell's gravy you're planning to serve. Campbell's, yes, the soup people your grandmother trusted, has been conducting what amounts to environmental terrorism against American waterways for years. Between 2018 and 2024, they racked up over 5,400 Clean Water Act violations at their facilities. We're talking about massive quantities of phosphorus, ammonia, E. coli, oil, and grease being pumped directly into the Maumee River and Lake Erie, the same Lake Erie that supplies drinking water to millions of Americans, including many children and grandchildren. The environmental damage is so severe that it's causing toxic algae blooms that kill fish, make water unsafe to drink, and create dead zones where nothing can survive. Campbell's pollution is literally destroying one of America's Great Lakes, and they knew exactly what they were doing because they had to formally admit liability in federal court. There's a trial coming in 2026 where Campbell's will face federal charges for these environmental crimes. The EPA documentation shows they were deliberately dumping industrial waste into public waterways while knowing it would cause ecological disaster. This isn't accidental pollution. This is calculated environmental destruction to save money on proper waste disposal. But Campbell's contamination problems extend far beyond environmental crimes. They've had 423,000 cans recalled for glass shards that could literally cut your throat or cause internal bleeding. That's nearly 500,000 cans of soup with glass fragments mixed right in with the food. Then there was the recall of 240,000 cans for undeclared milk and soy allergens, ingredients that could trigger life-threatening reactions in people with allergies. And just this past April 2025, the USDA issued a public health alert for wood contamination in Campbell's products. Wood particles in your food. The pattern here is clear. Campbell's has systematic quality control failures that put foreign objects and dangerous contaminants in their products while simultaneously poisoning the water supply. When you're thinking about the world you're leaving behind, supporting companies that destroy the environment while contaminating food isn't just bad for health, it's a betrayal of future generations. If you're finding this information valuable and want to stay protected from the food industry's most dangerous deceptions, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss an investigation that could save your family's health. Number 3 is Heinz. And before you say, but they make the best ketchup, let me tell you about one of the most shocking food safety disasters in recent memory that reveals how little this company actually cares about your safety. Heinz had to recall 570,000 cases of ketchup because of glass contamination from broken bottles during production. Picture this. You're making gravy with Heinz products, and there are actual glass particles mixed in from shattered bottles that broke during their manufacturing process. We're talking about glass shards that could cause choking, internal bleeding, or perforate your digestive system. The contamination was so widespread that the FDA had to shut down their entire production facility and launch a comprehensive investigation. What they found was a company that had such poor quality control that broken glass was making it through multiple safety checkpoints and ending up in finished products on store shelves. But the glass contamination incident reveals something even more disturbing about Heinz's corporate culture. Internal documents showed that workers had reported glass contamination issues to management multiple times before the massive recall, but production continued anyway, because stopping the line would have cost money. And here's the kicker about Heinz's pattern of deception. They settled a lawsuit for $180,000 because they were slapping all natural labels on products loaded with synthetic ingredients. This wasn't an accident or oversight. They had teams of lawyers and marketing people who knew exactly what they were doing when they decided to lie to consumers about their ingredients. The all-natural fraud specifically targeted people who actually read labels and care about what they put in their bodies. They knew that health-conscious consumers would pay premium prices for natural products, so they deliberately mislabeled synthetic products to capture that market segment. What makes this particularly insulting is that Heinz built their reputation over more than a century by marketing themselves as a trustworthy, family-friendly company. The Heinz name was supposed to represent quality and integrity, but they threw away that legacy to make a few extra dollars by lying about ingredients and shipping glass-contaminated products. For those who grew up when food companies had integrity and took pride in their products, Heinz represents the complete moral bankruptcy of modern corporate food production. They didn't just betray customer trust. They turned their manufacturing facilities into potential weapons factories, shipping glass shards disguised as condiments. But glass contamination is nothing compared to what McCormick has been hiding in their spice containers. And this one could literally kill you. And number 4 brings us to McCormick, the spice company that's been turning holiday meals into potential health emergencies through contamination so severe that the FDA had to classify their violations at the highest danger level. Between 2021 and 2023, McCormick had multiple recalls for salmonella contamination in black pepper, crushed red pepper, and seasoning blends. But this wasn't just a few contaminated batches. This was systematic contamination across multiple product lines and production facilities that shows fundamental failures in their safety protocols. The FDA investigation revealed that McCormick's quality control was so poor that salmonella bacteria was growing in their processing equipment and contaminating spices that go directly into food without further cooking. Think about that for a second. You're adding McCormick seasonings to your gravy, and you're potentially serving your family food poisoning bacteria that could cause severe illness or death. The contamination was so serious that the FDA had to halt production at multiple McCormick facilities and require comprehensive facility remediation before they could resume operations. We're talking about industrial-scale contamination that affected thousands of products distributed across the entire country. But McCormick's most dangerous violations involve what the FDA classifies as Class 1 recalls. That's the most serious level they have, reserved for products that could cause serious health problems or death. McCormick has had Class 1 recalls for undeclared allergens, including milk, soy, and wheat in their seasoning products. For people over 50, undeclared allergens aren't just inconvenient. They can be fatal. Many people develop food sensitivities or allergies later in life, and they rely on accurate labeling to avoid ingredients that could trigger severe reactions. When McCormick fails to declare major allergens like milk and wheat, they're literally playing Russian roulette with people's lives. The FDA enforcement actions against McCormick included facility inspections that found contaminated equipment, improper storage conditions, and inadequate testing procedures. Their spice processing facilities were so unsanitary that they were breeding grounds for dangerous bacteria. What makes this particularly disturbing is that McCormick markets themselves as the premium spice company, the brand that serious cooks trust for quality and purity. They charge premium prices based on their reputation for quality, but they've been shipping contaminated products that could kill you. When you've spent decades building family traditions around holiday cooking, discovering that your trusted spice brand has been contaminating food with deadly bacteria and hiding allergens that could trigger life-threatening reactions isn't just disappointing. It's a complete betrayal of everything you thought you knew about food safety. McCormick turned the simple act of seasoning food into a potential medical emergency, and they did it while charging premium prices for what they claimed was superior quality. Now, we're moving into green bean casserole territory, and what Del Monte has been doing to their workers will make your blood boil. Number 5 takes us into green bean casserole territory with Del Monte, and their story reveals a company that's been exploiting both workers and consumers while you're trying to put together a wholesome family meal. In 2024, Del Monte had to pay a $2 million settlement to the California Department of Industrial Relations for forcing their agricultural workers into brutal conditions. These are the people picking the green beans that end up in your casserole, and Del Monte was making them work excessive hours without proper rest periods in unsafe working conditions. When you're buying Del Monte, you're supporting a company that treats human beings as disposable. But the worker exploitation is just the beginning. This year alone, Del Monte recalled 197,808 cans of green beans for foreign object contamination. We're talking about metal fragments and other dangerous materials mixed right in with the green beans you're planning to serve your family. Then they had another recall of 179,263 pounds of beans for what they called unknown foreign material. They literally didn't even know what contamination they were shipping to stores. These weren't isolated incidents either. Del Monte has a documented pattern of putting profits over safety, whether it's exploiting the workers who harvest food or cutting corners on quality control that puts foreign objects in dinner. The recalls affected 21 states, meaning families across the country were potentially serving contaminated food at their holiday tables. For those who believe companies should treat workers with dignity and keep dangerous materials out of food, Del Monte represents everything wrong with corporate priorities today. Brand number 6 is Green Giant, and their cheerful marketing is hiding some deadly serious contamination problems that specifically target people over 50. Green Giant had to recall their frozen corn and mixed vegetables because of Listeria monocytogenes contamination. If you're not familiar with Listeria, let me explain why this is particularly dangerous for people over 50. This bacteria specifically targets older adults, pregnant women, and anyone with compromised immune systems. It causes meningitis, blood infections, and can be fatal. The contamination was so serious that the FDA had to shut down their production facility and launch a full investigation. They found that Green Giant's quality control was so poor that deadly bacteria was actually growing in their processing equipment. The vegetables that are supposed to be the healthy part of Thanksgiving meals were potentially the most dangerous thing on the table. But Green Giant's problems go beyond just bacterial contamination. They've also had multiple violations for pesticide residues above FDA tolerance levels in their vegetables. So not only were they potentially serving bacteria that could kill you, they were also exposing people to chemical contamination from agricultural pesticides. The FDA had to issue import alerts and require increased testing because Green Giant couldn't maintain basic safety standards. When a company can't keep deadly bacteria and illegal pesticide levels out of vegetables, it raises serious questions about what else they're not telling you. But if you think contaminated vegetables are scary, wait until you hear about the nationwide outbreak that Pillsbury caused with their dinner rolls. Brand number 7 is Pillsbury, and their violations represent one of the most serious food safety disasters in recent memory, with consequences that hit families across the entire country. Pillsbury's flour products became the source of an E. coli outbreak that affected 63 people across 24 states. We're talking about families trying to bake homemade dinner rolls for Thanksgiving who ended up in hospitals with kidney failure, severe dehydration, and other life-threatening complications from E. coli poisoning. The CDC investigation was extensive because the outbreak was so widespread. The FDA had to shut down Pillsbury's production facility and launch a full investigation into how such dangerous contamination could occur. When you think about it, flour is supposed to be one of the most basic, safe ingredients in baking, but Pillsbury managed to turn it into a weapon. But the E. coli outbreak wasn't their only contamination problem. Pillsbury has also had multiple recalls for salmonella contamination in their cake mixes and baking products. The FDA classified these as serious enough to halt production and require facility remediation. Every time you used a Pillsbury baking product, you were potentially exposing your family to foodborne illness. What makes this particularly disturbing is that Pillsbury built their brand on family baking traditions. The Pillsbury Doughboy represents wholesome family values and the joy of baking together. But they turned those cherished family moments into potential health emergencies. When grandchildren want to bake cookies with you, the last thing you should have to worry about is whether the flour might hospitalize them. The facility shutdowns and FDA investigations revealed systematic quality control failures that put millions of families at risk during what should have been safe, joyful baking experiences. Now let's talk about the sweet potato brands that round out Thanksgiving tables, and why even the smaller companies can't be trusted. Brand number 8 brings us to Bruce's, and while their violations might seem smaller in scale, they reveal important problems with how regional food companies handle safety and labeling. Bruce's has had ongoing issues with labeling compliance, specifically with nutritional information discrepancies on their canned yam products. The FDA issued warnings requiring them to correct their labels because the nutritional content wasn't matching what was actually in the cans. For people managing diabetes, heart conditions, or other health issues that require careful attention to nutrition labels, inaccurate information can be genuinely dangerous. They've also faced consumer complaints about product consistency and foreign matter found in some batches of their products. While these led to internal quality reviews and some batch recalls, the issues point to quality control problems in their production process. The concern with companies like Bruce's is that as smaller, regional producers, they sometimes don't face the same level of scrutiny as major corporations, but they're still responsible for maintaining food safety standards. When you're buying their products for holiday tables, you deserve the same level of safety and accurate labeling that you'd expect from any food company. And finally, brand number 9 is Princella, which rounds out the sweet potato category with their own set of labeling and quality control concerns. Princella has had FDA notifications for inconsistencies in their ingredient listings and nutritional information on their sweet potato products. Like Bruce's, they've had to make required corrections to their labeling because what was printed on the cans didn't match the actual product contents. This kind of mislabeling creates real problems for consumers who rely on accurate information to make safe food choices. They've also dealt with consumer complaints about product texture and consistency issues in certain production batches, leading to internal quality reviews and limited batch monitoring. While these might seem like minor issues compared to some of the major contamination problems we've discussed, they still represent a failure to maintain consistent quality standards. The pattern we see with both sweet potato companies is that even smaller scale violations matter when you're planning a family meal. Whether it's inaccurate labeling or inconsistent quality, these problems affect your ability to serve safe, reliable food to the people you care about. When you're putting together Thanksgiving tables, every component should meet basic standards for safety and honesty in labeling, regardless of whether it's coming from a major corporation or a smaller regional company. Now that you know which brands to avoid, let me give you the safe alternatives that will actually protect your family's health. Looking at all 9 of these brands, you can see the disturbing patterns that define modern food production. Whether it's Ocean Spray's market manipulation, Campbell's environmental crimes, or Pillsbury's deadly contamination outbreaks, these companies all share the same toxic corporate culture. They prioritize profits over people. They lie to consumers about ingredients, and they treat food safety as an optional expense rather than a moral obligation. From the massive corporations like Heinz shipping glass-contaminated products to smaller companies like Bruce's mislabeling nutritional information, the entire industry has abandoned the basic principle that food should be safe and honestly labeled. What's particularly disturbing is how these companies specifically target people over 50. They know this demographic reads labels, cares about quality, and is willing to pay more for products they trust. So they exploit that trust with false advertising, fake natural claims, and contaminated products hidden behind nostalgic marketing. The pattern is clear. Modern food companies view your family's safety as an obstacle to their profit margins, and they'll lie, cheat, and contaminate to maximize their bottom line. So what can you actually do to protect your family this Thanksgiving? First, understand that you can't trust brand names anymore. Companies that built their reputations over decades are throwing away that trust for short-term profits. Start reading ingredient lists like your life depends on it, because it does. When you see natural flavors or spices, those are often code words for synthetic chemicals and contaminated ingredients. Look for specific ingredient names, not vague marketing terms. Check recall databases before you shop. The FDA and USDA maintain current recall lists that most people never check. Spend 5 minutes before your shopping trip looking up recent recalls for the brands you're planning to buy. Pay attention to where your food is processed. Many store brands source from the same contaminated facilities as the name brands we've exposed today. Just because it has a different label doesn't mean it's safer. Most importantly, vote with your wallet. Every dollar you spend is a vote for the kind of food system you want. When you buy from companies that contaminate their products and exploit their workers, you're funding more contamination and exploitation. Here are your safe alternatives for each category. For cranberry sauce, skip Ocean Spray entirely and look for organic brands like Lakewood or make your own from fresh cranberries. It's easier than you think and tastes infinitely better. For gravy, avoid Campbell's, Heinz, and McCormick. Instead, try Simply Organic for spices, or better yet, make gravy from scratch using the drippings from your turkey. It's what grandmothers did, and they didn't have contamination problems. For green bean casserole, replace Del Monte and Green Giant with organic frozen vegetables from brands like Cascadian Farm or Woodstock Farms. These companies have cleaner safety records and don't exploit their workers. For dinner rolls, ditch Pillsbury and try local bakeries or make your own. If you must buy commercial, King Arthur Flour has a much better safety record and actually tests their products for contamination. For sweet potatoes, skip the canned versions entirely. Fresh sweet potatoes are cheaper, taste better, and don't come with labeling lies or quality control problems. The most important thing to remember is that you have more power than these corporations want you to believe. They're counting on your loyalty to familiar brands, your trust in their marketing, and your assumption that someone else is protecting your food safety. But the truth is, no one is looking out for your family's health except you. The FDA is understaffed and overwhelmed. The USDA is captured by industry interests. These companies have teams of lawyers whose job is to minimize liability and maximize profits. Your health, your family's safety, and your hard-earned money are too important to trust to companies that have proven they'll lie, contaminate, and exploit to increase their profits. You deserve better. Your family deserves better. And you have the power to demand better by choosing where you spend your money. This investigation into Thanksgiving sides brands is just the beginning. These same patterns of contamination, deception, and corporate greed exist across every category of food you buy. From breakfast cereals to dinner entrees, the companies you trust are betraying that trust every single day. If you want to protect your family from contaminated food and corporate lies, you need to stay informed about which brands are safe and which ones are dangerous. Check out one of the 2 videos on your screen now to continue protecting your family from the food industry's most dangerous deceptions.